So I've been getting a lot of questions about migrating to Canada, and just a lot of random questions. Different people have different questions that they want to know answers to. And so I just thought it would be nice to do a question and answer before we dive right back into the different pathways for provincial nominees next week. So we'll just be doing the question and answer session today. We'll just be answering some questions and giving you answers to questions you might have and you don't know you have. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Fee, a Nigerian living here in Canada, in Edmonton, Alberta. I've lived in Canada for almost 3 years now, and on this space I just like to share my journey, the processes of moving to Canada, how I moved to Canada, and the different available pathways for moving to Canada, and also about my experiences here living in Canada for over 2 years now. If you're new here, thank you very much for choosing to watch this video today, and if you haven't subscribed by now, please hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification button so you get notified each time I post a video. I post videos on Wednesdays by 6 p.m. Nigerian time, that is 11 a.m. Mountain time here in Edmonton. And if you're an old viewer and subscriber, thanks once again for choosing to watch this video today. I hope it would be insightful for you. So one of the most common questions I've been getting recently is, how do I migrate as a nurse? I am a nurse, my wife is a nurse, my fiance is a nurse, my friend is a nurse. How do I migrate as a nurse? So you should be able to migrate as a nurse to Canada under the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So that's a pathway you can use to migrate to Canada. You can also migrate as under the Canadian Experience Class program if you already have some experience here working in Canada. So that's not really applicable to most of the people I've been getting questions from. And you can also migrate under the provincial nominee program. A lot of provinces have different pathways for migration for nurses, for health workers. So provinces like Ontario, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, British Columbia, they have pathways specifically designed for nurses and health workers. So to migrate as a nurse, there are different NOCs that you can use to migrate. If you're a registered nurse or a registered psychiatric nurse, you can migrate using NOC 3012. So NOC 3012 under skill level A, and your code will be 3012. And if you're a licensed practical nurse, you can migrate under the skill level B and code 3233. So code 3233, this should be the code you should be applying under as a nurse who's looking to practice here. So to practice here as a nurse, you would definitely need to go through and undergo a licensing process. You cannot just come and start practicing as a nurse. So as an internationally trained nurse, you first of all need to get your education, your international education assessed and accredited. So you would have to do that with the National Nursing Assessment Services. You do that with the National Nursing Assessment Services, and once you have been assessed and you've been deemed to meet their requirements, you can then go ahead to go through your licensing journey with the appropriate licensing authority. So it's usually controlled by provinces, so you apply and follow the processes for the province you're looking to work in. So you get your assessment done, you apply for your license, and they give you exams that you're supposed to write, and you write those, and your journey to becoming a nurse here is set. So it may be possible for you to start writing your exams in Nigeria. I know for lawyers like me, there are some lawyers that do that. They write their exams while they're still back home and then come here and they just need to do their articling, and boom, they go into practice almost a year after they get here. So that might be the same for nurses. So you just have to do further research to see if you can start the exams back home in Nigeria. But then again, you could always migrate and come here and start the process. It doesn't necessarily have to go in that pattern. Another question which I get often is, how do I get a job to migrate to Canada? So we've talked about this before under the work visas, the temporary workers. you can get a job and move to Canada and eventually apply for your permanent residency after you move here. So you first of all need to find a job and then move here and then apply for permanent residency. So with this pathway, you're not a permanent resident when you get into Canada. It's only after some time that you can now apply to become a permanent resident of Canada. You'll just be a temporary resident. So first of all, you need to make sure that you have a Canadian standard cover letter and resume. You have to make sure that it meets the requirements. You don't need to put information like your sex, you don't need to put information like your age. You don't necessarily have to have a referee on the resume, but you also need to make sure that you tailor your resume to Canadian standard. Tailor your resume to the job that you are looking to apply for. So if they are looking for a specific type of experience, search deep into your work history. I'm sure you would have done that in the course of your work, and then tailor that experience to the resume. So you have to sit down and read the job description that you are given, and then make sure you tailor your resume to meet that, because you cannot just be given one resume and expecting to get a job. You have to tailor it to suit the job that you are applying, and then you can apply for your job on sites like Indeed, Monster. There is Job Bank. Job Bank is like a government website that has different jobs for even temporary workers. You would be able to look and see options for temporary workers to apply for jobs in Canada. You would see employers that are hiring temporary workers and are hiring people from outside Canada. So you look on sites like that, Government of Canada, there is LinkedIn. So there are different job that there are different job sites where you can look. So you look and make sure that that employer is willing to hire somebody from outside Canada. And once hired, the employer has to apply for a labor market impact assessment. Once they get that labor market impact assessment, you can then go ahead to apply for your visa. And once you apply for your temporary visa, get to Canada, boom boom boom, apply for your permanent residency, become a citizen of Canada. Like, that's the dream, and that's how we hope it goes for everybody. I also keep getting questions about proof of funds, like what can I use as proof of funds. So basically, I'll first of all explain what that proof of fund is and why it's needed. So proof of funds is funds that you have to have available to show that you are able to take care of yourself when you move to Canada. Like, when you move, you wouldn't be eligible to get benefits like government assistance. Basically, you wouldn't be eligible for that immediately. So the government needs to be sure that you wouldn't come here and become a burden to the system. So it needs to be sure that you're able to take care of yourself at least for the first 6 months or thereabout, before you settle down and get a job. Or if, God forbid, the pandemic happened, like I was unfortunate to come in 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, and so I wasn't able to get a job immediately, and so I stayed some time. I had to dip my hand into my proof of funds just to be able to stand on my feet until I was able to get a job. So that is, like, I really saw the need to have that proof of funds. So this is money that the government needs you to have to make sure you can take care of yourself when you come in without necessarily becoming a burden to the system. So you're able to stand on your feet until you can find a job. Like, you may not find a job immediately you get in, but it is hoped that in a couple of months you should be able to find even at least a survival job that would take care of all of your needs until you're able to find a more suitable job for you. So what can you use as proof of funds? It has to be a letter on the bank's letterhead with the bank's contact information, with your name, and providing your account balance, providing any debts that you might have. So if you have a debt, if you borrowed money, if you have a credit card for countries that have that, if you have any loan on your account, that statement of that proof of fund, that letter from your bank should show that. It should indicate that it will indicate how much you have as a balance, and how the banking activities for the last 4 to 6 months. So it should indicate that. So that would be something you can use as proof of fund. It has to be from your bank. You not use things like an equity on real property that you might own. That is not proof of funds. You cannot borrow money to show proof of funds. You can have the money in different currencies. I had the money in different currencies. I had the money in dollars and I had in naira, and so I got the letters from my 2 banks to show the amount of money I had in those 2 banks. And then you cannot borrow money, but I believe you can get a gift from a family member that is willing to assist you with your move to Canada. Like my dad and my sister gave me some money towards my move, and so they did a gift deed indicating that this was a gift and they wouldn't be asking for the money back. So they gave me a gift deed, and I used that to prove the amount of money that I had to take care of myself while in Canada before I get a job. One of the biggest questions I keep getting would be, how much do I need to migrate? Migrating to Canada has actually become really expensive. It wasn't this expensive when I migrated to Canada. Like, I think when I migrated to Canada, I needed only about 3 point something as proof of funds. I think I spent less than $1 million to pay for all of the things that I needed to pay for to move. But with the exchange rate being what it is, it's becoming more and more difficult to move to Canada. It's becoming more and more expensive to move to Canada as the exchange rate just keeps going off the roof. I've prepared a breakdown of the amounts you would need for your journey for migrating to Canada. So I'm going to be using an example of someone, a single individual who is migrating under the express entry pathway. It's just going to give you an idea of what you should be expecting to have, what you should be expecting to spend in your journey to Canada. This is just one based on one person. You could look at the website. I'll leave the link in the description box below to get an idea of the things you would need and the amounts that you would need to migrate. So first of all, you would need your language test. So either IELTS with IDP or IELTS with the British Council. You would need 83,000 naira. So your language test would set you back 83,000 naira. That would be one of your first expenses in the whole process. You'd need to assess your educational credentials. This would be one of the first things as well that you spend money on, and that would be $240. So I'm using the example of West. There are other assessment bodies, but I'll just be using West because that's what I'm more conversant with. I used it, my friends used it, my sisters used it. So for West, it would be $240. $240 with the going rate of the exchange. With the exchange rate right now, it will translate to 125,040 naira. So that is how much you would need to assess your academic credentials. Then you would also need to have proof of funds. So using one person under the express entry program, one person needs to have 13,310 Canadian dollars. So 13,310 Canadian dollars translates to $6,934,510. So you have to have almost 7 million in your account during the whole process of your application to prove that you are able to take care of yourself when you move to Canada. Like when I was moving, it was about 12,000 something. So the difference right now is just about 1,000 plus, maybe give or take 1,500, not more than $2,000. But because of the exchange rate, it's now almost 7 million. Again, if you have the money in dollars, if you have the money in pounds, you can prove your funds that way. You just need to show that you have this fund available and accessible to you to use when you move to Canada. And if you need a passport I'm going to be using the example of somebody who's using a 10-year passport, a 64-page passport valid for 10 years. I would advise that you do that, so you don't come here and you start looking for how to renew your passport if it expires. And so you can apply for your passport for 10 years, 64 pages. That would cost you 70,000 naira, 70,000 naira. That's what I'm going to be using for the example, but I'll tell you the price for other passport booklets. So for 64 pages, 5-year validity, that would be 35,000. 32 pages, 5 years validity, that would be 25,000 naira. You have to make sure you're taking into account the peculiarities of applying for a passport in Nigeria. It might cost you more than this. Then you also need to have a police certificate from everywhere that you have lived. So in Nigeria right now, it costs about 10,000. I know because like earlier in the year I had to apply for a police certificate. It costs 10,000 naira to get a police certificate in Nigeria. So you can get that from the Nigerian police, and from every other country where you've lived, you need to get a police certificate. So they might be more expensive. This example is just for somebody who's only lived in Nigeria. So any other country where you've lived in for more than 6 months, you would need a police certificate. Then what are your application fees? So I'm again going to be using the example of someone who's applying under the express entry. Other programs, their fees might be different, but for someone applying for express entry, it would cost you 850 Canadian dollars for your processing fees. So for your processing fee, 850 Canadian dollars, you must pay this when you submit your application, and that translates to 442,850 naira. Then you also have to pay your right of permanent residency fee. So your right of permanent residency fee, this you don't have to pay at the time you pay your processing fee. I did not do that. I paid mine later, so I only paid the processing fee, and when my application was almost approved, they told me that I had to go pay that, so I went to pay. So the right of permanent residency fee is $515. The amount is $515, so that translates to 268,315 naira. So that's how much you have to pay for your right of permanent residency. Then you also have to pay your biometric. Again, this is for one person, and the biometric costs 85,000 naira, and that amounts to 44,285 naira. So that's how much you have to pay for your biometrics fee. You also have to pay your medical fee. You have to do medicals, and you have to pay for that. That costs currently, my sisters had to do theirs earlier in the year, and that costs 46,500. So 46,500 would be what it would cost you to get your medicals done. There are also other costs attached to applying to move to Canada. There are also other costs attached to the process. So like once your COPR is to be granted, they'll ask you to take a passport photograph. It usually costs about maybe 1,700, but that generally would fall under minor expenses that you have to make to facilitate the whole process. I wouldn't be including that in the total. So the total which you would need with proof of funds right now for one person applying under the express entry would be 8,024,500 naira. So right now you have to have 8,024,500 naira to be able to migrate to Canada. The total without the proof of funds, so what you need to pay for your assessments, your language tests, your medicals and all of that, your fees, your processing fee and all of that right now would be $1,089,990. That is what you would need to pay for all the expenditures that you would need to make, aside all of the sundry expenses that you may need to make. Finally, one of the most popular questions I keep getting is, should I migrate as a student or should I move to Canada as a permanent resident? My answer is not going to be this is what is going to be best for you. You choose what is best for you. But for migrating as a student, what I do know is that moving here to Canada to study is really expensive. It's expensive studying in Canada as an international student, but it does have its benefit because after you study, you get to have some you get to get a visa that lets you work after you study, and then you can apply to become a permanent resident of Canada. And the visa is usually faster. It's usually faster than the permanent residency part. Let us be honest with ourselves. It's more expensive, but it's faster. And then your job prospects are better. Like Canadian employers would most likely take someone who is Canadian educated over somebody who is internationally educated. It does not mean that you wouldn't be able to get a job as an internationally trained job seeker, but it's just easier for those who were educated here in Canada. So yes, they have the advantage. It's faster and job prospects are generally better. And also the time which you spend here as a student will generally count towards your citizenship application. So when you are a permanent resident and you become due to apply, you become eligible to apply for your citizenship, the time spent as a student may also count towards your application. Moving to Canada as a permanent resident also has its own advantage because like it's not as expensive. You don't need as much money as a student will need to migrate to Canada. It's less expensive, and you would have your proof of funds to come and take care of yourself while you're here. But as a student, you would have to pay that fees to the school to get that education. But with permanent residency, the money is still yours. So if you come in and immediately you find a job, you don't have to touch your proof of funds. So it's there for you to spend as you please. And you also have the benefits of permanent residents here, almost the same benefits as citizens. You should be able to get student loans and grants. So if you do want to go back to school, that is an option. You get student loan and grant, but it might take a longer time to get the visa, get the approval to move to Canada. Like I know somebody, my cousin actually, we started our process at about the same time, and he is just finally getting his approval. So sometimes it takes a while. Like the pandemic played a fast one on us, but yeah, sometimes it takes a while to get your approval. And then with the whole situation with the points being so high, you not being able to get that, time keeps going, and those are some of the issues with moving here as a permanent resident. But generally that's an option most people would go with. So you have to ask yourself, do I want to just leave Nigeria, or am I looking to get an education? Am I looking to move right now, or am I looking to take my time and move to Canada whenever the option becomes available? So you have to ask yourself those questions and determine what works best for you. So these are just some of the questions that I've had, some of the most popular questions that I've had people ask me over the course of the last few weeks. I hope it was insightful. I hope you were able to pick a thing or two. Thank you very much for watching, and please make sure you like this video, make sure you share, make sure you leave a comment. If you have further questions, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer those questions. And make sure to share this video with your friends, share it with anyone you know who's looking to go through this process, and hopefully it enlightens them and make their process easier. Thanks once again guys for watching the video today. I hope you picked something
And please make sure to follow me on social media. The handle is Fee, PH_EEE, PH_EEE. Thank you very much. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and also make sure to hit the notification button so you're notified each time I post a video. Thank you, and do have a lovely rest of your week. Goodbye.